Viktor Bout, who was imprisoned in the United States. He's a notorious figure. During the 1990s, he sold arms to warlords and rogue governments, becoming one of the world's most wanted men. He was dubbed the Merchant of Death and sold guns to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. I'm joined now by Cathy Lynn Austin. She's an internationally recognised expert on arms trafficking, peace, security and human rights. She's a founder and executive director of the Conflict Awareness Project. Welcome. Who is Viktor Bout?
Well, Viktor Bout is a monster, of course, but he's one of the most prolific arms traffickers in the world. He was so sophisticated that even when US, UN, EU sanctions were in place against him, he managed to thwart those sanctions and managed to be responsible for delivering weapons to conflict and war zones from Afghanistan, Colombia, Congo, Sierra Leone, Liberia, pretty much all over the world. And that resulted in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of deaths.
Now, they've made one movie about this guy. In fact, I've seen it, the one with Nicolas Cage in, and I'm told they're making another. And I understand that the person playing you is Angelina Jolie. So clearly you had a significant role to play. What was that?
Well, I found Viktor Bout, kind of first discovered him, brought him to the world attention based on his activities in support of the Rwandan genocide, and then later the spillover into the Congo, which did result in 5 million deaths. So I kind of tracked him around the world. I would develop dossiers on him, was hired by the UN to go out and to document his sanctions busting activities. And even after he was arrested, sentenced, and put in prison, I went to the island of Mauritius to track what his bad lieutenants were up to, trying to keep on with his activities and operations, even while Viktor Bout was in prison. So I have a very good idea of how Viktor Bout works. I have a very good idea that he will want to be out there, back in the play, and that he's very much a good asset for Putin.
So very much more than the cargo pilot that he says he is. You've almost touched on my next question. Why do they want him back specifically? Because there's a Russian hacker in prison who they might have wanted back. There are other people they might have wanted back. Why him? And what role does he play now, given what's going on in Ukraine?
Well, the Russians have wanted Viktor Bout back from the very beginning, and almost every foreign policy meeting between the US and Russia, Viktor Bout has been on the table. So this is long-standing. It goes back quite far. Viktor Bout is an asset of Putin, and his sanctions busting activities, given how the sanctions are crippling, Western sanctions are crippling Russia in Ukraine, Viktor Bout's going to be an asset. He's a weapon of mass destruction that Putin is ready to deploy.
Alex Massie, this is just a Russian play. When you look at what they've done here and who they arrested, I mean, Brittany Griner was carrying these vape cartridges. There was 0.7 of a gram of cannabis oil in these cartridges. If you were a Russian and you were caught with that, you'd get a slap on the wrist. She got 9 years in prison. This was always the intention, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, it's certainly, you can certainly make a very good case for that being so. This is realpolitik. This is not a place for poetry and dreams and pretending that the world is as we might like it to be arranged. You're talking here about relations between the United States, still the world's preeminent power, and Russia, which, while not what it once was, still considers itself to be a great power. And so it is not surprising, if you like, that they play by different rules, because the only way that Russia can have any kind of equivalency with the United States is by insisting on playing by different rules, by throwing out the international rule book, if you like. And so you get situations like this as a result of that power imbalance, actually.
Cathy, I've just got room for one more. The rumour is that he was part of the GRU, military intelligence. Is this a case of not leaving a man behind for Vladimir Putin? Is there a personal connection?
There is a personal connection. And as I mentioned, he's always been at the forefront of talks between Russia and the US. But I think it's more than that. I think it is about an asset that Putin is ready to deploy. His back is against the wall with sanctions being crippled his military, and he knows he can rely on Viktor Bout, which leads me to my one point I do want to make, that we can and need to continue to try to box him in. That is what we need to do with Viktor Bout. We can't let the story end with just this release.
Kathy Lynn Austin, thank you for joining us this evening on the programme.
Thank you.